I would like to dedicate this bike build to Cameron Niemela, who was a huge inspiration for me to start this YouTube channel and an all-around amazing human being. Cam passed away after a long, hard-fought battle with cancer while this video was being filmed. Rest in peace, Cam, and thank you for everything. Today, I am incredibly excited to announce my next dirt bike build and giveaway. And this one is unique because it is a true 100% giveaway, no paid entries, and no merch requirements. The goal is to get this bike into the hands of a kid who really deserves it. I am so fortunate to have turned a hobby into a full-time job over the last couple of years, and that is thanks to you watching these videos, supporting the builds, entering giveaways, and buying merch. I am so grateful to each and every one of you watching, and I feel that it is my turn to give back and bring some awareness to a few things that matter in the world right now. So I will be donating my time to build this 2003 Yamaha YZ85 two-stroke. This was my buddy Riley's childhood dirt bike, and we got together to discuss how we could put this bike towards a good cause. I recently watched a ski film called Mountain in My Mind, which is about bringing awareness to mental health, specifically in mountain towns where the suicide rate is 3 times the national average. This film was started by my friend John, whose younger brother committed suicide at just 15 years old. It's no secret, America is a tough place to grow up right now, and people are struggling with all sorts of different things, and our country feels more divided than ever. I was one of the last of the 90s kids, and I grew up in a much more simple world. I totally get that it's harder to be a kid right now than it was for me. And one thing that I think brings positivity to anyone's life who gets to experience them is dirt bikes. So before I begin transforming Riley's YZ85, I'd like to talk about how you can support a great cause if you would like to, since there are no paid entries for this project. First of all, you can use the GoFundMe link in the description below to donate to Cam's wife Haley and their children to help with support after his passing. The second item I'm going to talk about with my buddy Riley, and this will benefit struggling kids here in Montana where I live. My buddy Riley here bought this snowmobile to give away, so you can also win a snowmobile, but much more importantly is where the proceeds from this sled giveaway are going. So Riley, do you want to take a minute to tell us where the funds from this sled giveaway will end up?
Yeah, so the majority of the funds are going to Big Sky Youth Empowerment. And they provide youth with an adventure-based group mentoring program to help them build a supportive community.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for letting us use your childhood dirt bike and providing a snowmobile to give away, all to great causes. I think it's about time to get back in my garage and get this project rolling. So I appreciate you.
I like it. Appreciate you.
Also, in full transparency, I will still be monetizing these videos with ads, which will help pay the bills while I build this bike, and links that support me directly, such as merch and affiliate links, will be categorized clearly down in the description below. So I know this has been a long intro, but it's arguably the most important intro I've ever filmed. If any of you watching this are struggling with something, I want to let you know you matter, and it will get better even if it doesn't feel that way right now. So let's tear this YZ85 apart, and I will let you guys know how you can win it. All right, so here is how it's going to work to enter to win this Yamaha YZ85. There is a link in the description to a form on my website. It'll ask you a few basic questions and then ask you for your video submission link. You can upload a video to YouTube, public or unlisted, telling me why you deserve to win the bike. You can also apply for other people, whoever that may be, whether that's your kid, brother, nephew, etc. Your submission must be 90 seconds or less, and all of these details are covered on my website as well. It is a shame that there can only be one winner, but I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. Submissions are open for 2 weeks from the publication of this video, so if you want a chance to win this thing, don't miss the opportunity. And while I continue to tear this bike apart, I need to thank the companies that helped make this project possible. I wanted to make this happen while ideally not digging too far into my own pockets. Every person and company I asked for help stepped up without hesitation. I will talk about each of them during appropriate portions of the video, but I also want to take a moment right now to thank them. First of all, DecalWorks stepped up big time and actually sponsored the cost of the bike itself. This allowed me to allocate those funds that I would have spent on the bike to nicer parts and parts that I couldn't get sponsored, and allowed Riley to recover some cost from his childhood dirt bike. Rocky Mountain ATVMC provided tons of parts along with MXPlastics.com, ProX, Wiseco, IMS, Bolt Hardware, Fathead Racing, SKF, and Cerakoting. Powder Coating of Montana, MX Revival, Fast Blast and Coat, and Nick Cook were all willing to provide their services free of charge, and you will see shortly how important each of these people and companies were to completely transforming this YZ85 into a project that I'm proud of and someone will be lucky to win. While I continue tearing this thing apart, I will talk a little bit about the bike build process, as I get lots of questions about where to begin, or how to organize parts, or how to know what to tackle next. The truth is, if you look at the big picture of a bike build, it can be very intimidating. The list seems so daunting, and especially right after teardown, I find myself thinking, what have I done? It is also worth noting that while I'm talking about building dirt bikes, these same concepts apply to really any projects I've done in my life. So as for sorting parts, I've gotten pretty solid over the years at knowing the general structure of these bikes, so I sort of arrange things together during disassembly, but if it's your first time, I'd recommend using small storage containers or Ziploc bags to carefully arrange and label everything if you're not 100% sure where it goes. It is really easy during teardown to say, oh yeah, I'll remember that. But when it's 6 months later and you finally get back to assembling the bike, sometimes your memory doesn't serve you as well as you thought it would. As for where to start or what to tackle next, I like to make task lists of each major component that I'll be working on. For example, this bike will be separated into suspension, chassis, brakes, engine, wheels, exhaust, and then some smaller one-off tasks. You can then break those down into subtasks and start checking boxes one at a time. This is what my workspace looked like after teardown. A big, messy pile of tools and parts everywhere. So I organized them all and started working on subtasks. First, I needed to degrease the frame and subframe to prepare them for new powder coating. While those items soaked in a degreaser bath, I began the engine teardown. You can see when I pull the oil drain bolt, some coolant comes out. That is not a great sign and made me curious to see what I would find inside this engine. Riley and I did spend some time kicking the bike and did not get it started, but we didn't try too hard and I didn't troubleshoot it since I was going to take it all apart anyway. He said it ran a year or two ago, but ran like crap, so it's my job to turn this thing into a little rocket ship once again. For order of operations here, I like to use a Tusk piston stop tool in the cylinder head, as that allows me to remove both the flywheel and primary gear without a gear jammer. If you are unfamiliar with how this works, the piston stop tool sits farther into the cylinder head than a spark plug would, and the top of the piston physically hits that tool when you turn the engine over. This effectively locks up the engine and, like I said, simplifies the process of removing those other engine components. Now watch as I attempt to remove these stator bolts and nearly slip with a Phillips head. This is where the impact screwdriver saves the day, and if you don't have one of these, I would highly recommend getting one. They're literally $15 on Rocky Mountain. Flywheel and primary removed, I could now remove the cylinder as I no longer needed the engine to be locked up. A couple love taps with the mallet on the cylinder freed it up, as sometimes the cylinder studs can get a little seized. When I pulled the cylinder, components looked to be in reasonable shape, but you could see this coolant oil mixture on the face of the piston, so things definitely weren't sealing the way they should, and this engine was undoubtedly due for a rebuild. I removed the remainder of the shift components along with the countershaft sprocket and finally the case bolts, and these cases were ready to be split. I utilized my crankcase splitter tool and these cases came apart fairly easily, and once again, check out the nasty mixture on this crankshaft. It took me a while to figure out how to remove the transmission, as there's a circlip on one of the shift fork shafts and it's pretty well hidden and needed to be removed. I wrestled some circlip pliers in there and finally got the transmission and shift drum fully removed. Install might be a little tricky on this one. At this point, all of the 20-year-old grime had broken down on the frame and subframe, so the degreaser bath was ready to be swapped out for these engine parts. I did a final scrub on the frame and subframe and dropped them off at Powder Coating of Montana. After the cases had soaked for a while to loosen up their grime, I removed the seals with my Tusk seal puller and then placed the cases in the oven at 300 degrees for 30 minutes. This causes the aluminum to expand, which makes the bearings either fall out or very easy to remove. You can see the bearings come out with a quick whack from a socket. After further degreasing and cleanup, I ran the cases through the dishwasher. I would only recommend doing this if you are single or get permission from your significant other, but it has always been pretty effective for me. Along with those engine components, I had some more parts I wanted to send out to Charles over at MX Revival to be vapor blasted, and these parts needed to be prepped as well. With a pretty cool color scheme in mind, these parts, all shined up to perfection, will look amazing. The triple clamps are one of those parts, and I had to remove the lower steering bearing. These can be tricky as there isn't much of a lip protruding. I ended up slicing through the inner part of the bearing with the rotary tool. I did nick the steering stem a bit, but I smoothed out the burrs I created with a Prime MX wheel, and those won't cause any functional issues. Next up was the brakes. I fully disassembled both master cylinders and the calipers. To remove the front brake pistons, I used compressed air. With the first piston removed, I plugged the piston hole with a rubber plug and clamp it down in order to remove the second piston. For these little screws on the front master cylinder, I use a prime JIS screwdriver to ensure I do not strip those heads. Finally, the carb got the same treatment of a full disassembly, and then I soaked everything in a degreaser bath before scrubbing it all down. I used Super Clean as my degreaser, and actually used Dawn dish soap when scrubbing components. With everything now prepped, I was ready to package these components up to send out to MX Revival, who will make them look absolutely stunning. Along with those parts, I sorted out hardware that could stand to be replated with fresh zinc plating, and all of that went out to Nick Cook. Like I said, both Charles and Nick are donating their services for this project. With those parts shipped out, there's still plenty on the to-do list. Now this is where my process begins to jump all over the place. There are so many small tasks to do in order to prepare everything to be reassembled or rebuilt, and I kind of start jumping around based on what I feel like doing at the time, because any progress is forward progress, and all of these items need to be taken care of at some point to see the project through. Spending so much time cleaning nasty old parts, it can be a breath of fresh air to shift gears a bit, so I had this front wheel to lace up from Tusk. Rocky Mountain wasn't going to have complete front wheels in stock until late November, which was cutting it a little too close on my goal completion of this bike, but they did have all of the parts in stock to build a wheel. I actually find lacing wheels to be pretty satisfying, so I laced and trued this wheel without issue, and then it was time to finish up the wheel set. I've got a new primary drive rear sprocket along with Tusk tubes and tires, and this awesome new hardware kit from Bolt. Now you guys know I've worked with Fast Metric for many years, but they did not have a kit available for the YZ85, so they connected me with Bolt. This just shows how awesome these companies are for being willing to work together to make a project like this happen for a deserving kid. So thanks to both Fast Metric and Bolt, and I'm super impressed with this kit. It has got everything I need for the engine, plastics, wheels, and chassis, and is really well organized and laid out. I did my best not to scratch these new rims while installing the Tusk tires, and I managed to get both tires installed without popping a tube. From there, I installed that new rear sprocket and then took the existing rotors off of the old wheel set and cleaned them up with Prime MX wheels. This wheel set is now complete and ready to go. I must say, completed wheels are such a satisfying part of a build, and once again, huge thanks to Rocky Mountain for providing this wheel set. Moving right along, this exhaust system is actually in phenomenal shape and just needs a little elbow grease. This complete FMF system has no dents or notable damage and is simply a little grimy. A little Tusk contact cleaner, followed by Prime MX wheels, took care of both the header and the silencer, shining them both back to perfection. For the silencer, I started with coarse Prime MX wheels, which took care of any small burrs or scratches, and then followed up with the fine cleaning wheel for the finishing touches. For the header, I only used the fine cleaning wheel, as the coarse cleaning wheel is abrasive enough to strip that plating off, which would result in a raw factory look, but I opted to keep the plating on this pipe. I repacked the silencer and sealed it with gasket maker, and had a couple FMF stickers lying around to add a nice little touch to the exhaust. I like the look of the decals going over both the silencer tip and the body, so I customized accordingly, and I think this exhaust turned out great. Now while I disassemble the rear shock and forks, I want to take a minute to talk about and remember Cameron Niemela. I had recorded audio for this segment before Cam passed, talking about his battles with cancer and how you could help Cam in that battle. While Cam's passing is a truly devastating loss for not only Cam's friends and family, but the entire dirt bike community, I am so grateful for the impact Cam left on this world and feel some sense of peace in knowing that Cam is no longer in pain. He is really the man responsible for the bike build scene on YouTube. I realize when I look at many people I now know in this community how we may not have crossed paths if it weren't for Cam. I learned so much from his videos over the years and don't know if this would be my full-time job today if it were not for the impacts Cam had on me and learning what you could achieve with attention to detail and great patience. Cam was an incredible person, and I'm proud to be able to build this bike for a deserving kid in his honor. I will think about Cam every time I use a Prime wheel for the rest of my life, and with the suspension apart, you can see the impact those Prime wheels have on these fork lugs. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the two forks, one before and one after the use of Prime wheels. With everything disassembled, I had a batch of parts to Cerakote, and those first spent some time in a degreaser bath, while a few other parts needed the Prime treatment. This clutch cover is to be Cerakoted, but you can see it has quite a few scratches and dings. With Cerakote being so thin, these imperfections would show through. Thus, this cover receives the prime treatment as well, taking care of those imperfections to allow Cerakote to have a uniform finish. The coarse cleaning wheel makes incredibly quick work of this. I spent less than 10 minutes refinishing this cover. Also note, if you do this yourself, wearing a respirator is super important regardless of how uncomfortable it is. These airborne particles are not good to breathe in, and it is important to take care of yourself during these projects. While the other parts finished soaking, I could install some brand new bearings into the linkage knuckle and swing arm using rebuild kits from Pro X Racing Parts. You can see here, Pro X made a massive contribution to this project, with rebuild kits for the linkage, swing arm, brakes, and carb, along with a top-end kit, brake pads, clutch plates, and cables. I've been using Pro X parts for many years now and can confidently say they make quality, reliable parts. I utilized my vise to install the new linkage bearings on that freshly refinished knuckle, and after cleaning up the swing arm and removing the old graphics, I reinstalled that chain slider before also pressing new Pro X bearings into the swing arm. Swing arm bearing installation can be done with the vise as well, but it is a little awkward, so I used the Motion Pro swing arm bearing install tool. With that complete, my other parts were degreased and ready to hit the blast cabinet. To plug important holes, I used this plug kit from Cerakote, and to cover the shock shaft, I wrapped it in heat tape I bought on Amazon. After an hour or two blasting away, these parts were fully stripped and onto the last step before coating. That final step is the gas out phase, where all of the parts go in the oven at 300 degrees for an hour to eliminate any remaining oil residues within the metal. I then set up my very professional Cerakote booth in the garage, and this is an example of just making it work. And this is made possible in my garage by my Pioneer mini split that keeps this space climate controlled. I went with Cerakote E100 Blackout, which is the same color I used on the CR250 build that turned out great. I racked and sprayed the first batch of components and then baked them at 300 degrees for an hour, and during that time I racked and sprayed the second batch. 1 hour later, all parts were fully cured and came out incredible. This is me scratching these components as hard as I can with my fingernails, trying to scuff them up, and I cannot do it. This coating is durable, thin, and beautiful. But I had one final touch to add to the clutch cover. That is some Cerakote C242 hidden white to bring that Yamaha lettering to life. I utilized the color fill pen found on the Cerakote website to carefully fill in the lettering, and what a satisfying process this was. With the clutch cover complete, check out the before and after of these parts. This fully concludes the last of the teardown, wash, and prep phase of this entire build, and it's time to start putting things together. Beginning with the suspension, where I will be utilizing some new fork seals and bushings courtesy of SKF, who offers the highest quality fork seals on the market. With the suspension rebuilt, complete with a new shock spring available from Intech, the final step was to head over to Deja Moto for a nitrogen charge, and the completed suspension set is ready to go, looking beautiful as ever. At this point, while I awaited the completion of my frame and engine components, my package from DecalWorks arrived, and I was able to replace this crusty old seat cover with a fresh one. Once again, a huge thank you to DecalWorks for not only sponsoring the cost of this YZ85, but their continued support over the years. I have now ran countless seat covers and graphics kits from DecalWorks, and they have a huge selection over on their website, so go check them out, and I will reveal the graphics kit for this bike shortly. But what I won't make you wait any longer to see is these components that came back from Charles at MX Revival. While the original plan was to vapor blast all of these parts, it turns out some had existing coatings, which made Cerakote a more logical choice. So Charles got Dean over at Fast Blast and Coat on board, who provided his services, transforming these parts into this beautiful bronze along with some hints of black. Those parts, along with the parts that Charles vapor blasted, look absolutely stunning. I now have all of the components I need to build this beautiful engine, including a Fathead Racing cylinder head, Pro X clutch plates, piston and top end gaskets, and a bottom end rebuild kit including bearings, seals, gaskets, and a crankshaft from Wiseco. Now let's build a YZ85 engine. Now with that stunning YZ85 engine complete, my hardware arrived back from Nick's Vapor Honing Services with fresh zinc plating. Look at this incredible transformation, and Nick left me a nice note as well, so Nick, I appreciate your help. A couple pieces of that hardware were necessary to finish rebuilding the brakes, so I wrapped up the brake components and then picked up my frame from Powder Coating of Montana. We went with a blue that is lighter than Yamaha blue, which was a bit of a gamble, but when you see the accents on the graphics, I hope you will agree it was a good choice. The guys at Powder Coating of Montana are so busy, yet made time to donate their services for this project and did a wonderful job. With the frame and all of the components rebuilt and simply awaiting assembly, I could not wait to put this bike back together. It is 11:38 p.m. on November 17th. I am driving out to Spokane, Washington tomorrow morning for Cam Niemela's memorial. As devastated and sad as I've been to hear about Cam's passing, I can't help but think about all of the wonderful people I'm going to meet at his memorial that I have met online thanks to Cam's presence on the internet and what he did making these videos, bringing people together, teaching us how to do things like this. So I will be forever grateful to Cam. There are still a few things left to do to finish this build off, but those will happen after I get home from Cam's memorial. But for now, this bike should be ready for its first start. So I just want to hear this thing run, and then I'm taking off early tomorrow morning to celebrate Cam's life, and then we'll get back to the YZ85. Oh, she wants to go right away here. Woo! I think idle's just low, to be honest. I didn't really know where to set the idle.
Well, let's fix that.
She's fired right up. That's sick. Dude. Let's go. All right, so I smoked it up pretty good in here, but that is one of the cleanest, easiest first starts I've had on a normal carbed bike in so long. That was actually super impressive. Just had to adjust the idle a little bit, and this thing purrs, revs up. Might need some jetting work to actually rip it here in Montana, but who knows where this bike is going to end up. So that will conclude the YZ85 progress for tonight, and I will finish this bike off in Cam's honor after celebrating his life at his memorial service. Despite shedding quite a few tears, Cam's memorial was truly a wonderful celebration of his life. I had the chance to meet quite a few people I know only from the internet, largely due to Cam, including Luke from Fathead Racing and Charles from MX Revival, who both supported this project. Cam's wife Haley was absolutely lovely and shared stories with us about Cam that made me appreciate who he was even more. In true Cam fashion, his ashes are in a CR250 cylinder, and to my surprise, his CR250 build was on display at the memorial. I arrived home the next day, sleep deprived yet more grateful than ever for this life I have the privilege of living, and began putting the finishing touches on this YZ85. After Cam passed, DecalWorks quickly got me a new set of number graphics to honor Cam and wrap up this build. So there you have it. In the course of about a month and a half, I transformed my buddy Riley's 03 YZ85 here. His childhood bike is ready to go to a new home. While some of you guys are submitting your videos for the next 2 weeks for your chance to win this bike, I'll be fine-tuning it, making sure it's ready to go. Again, there are links below to support a couple great causes. One is a GoFundMe to help out Cam Niemela's family during these difficult times with his passing, as well as a link to enter to win Riley's snowmobile, where the majority of the proceeds are going to Big Sky Youth Empowerment, which helps kids get into an adventure-based program, helping them find their way in the world. It has been an awesome experience building this bike for a deserving kid to win, and I cannot wait to meet the kid who wins it. If there's anything I learned from both watching Mountain on My Mind and going to Cam Niemela's memorial, it's that life is short, cherish the people you love, and make the most of every day. Thanks for watching.